No, he's not here yet. Good afternoon, all, and welcome to today's session. Today, we'll be looking at a very interesting topic, which I'm sure has brought all of us here. One that is sometimes deemed to be contentious, but one really, when properly understood, makes the workplace a more harmonious place and a place for persons to grow and to learn to live with, different types of persons. We're looking at diversity in the workplace. What does it mean? And we have I would say the top guns, right, to discuss this. We have some major top guns. I'm just going to introduce them very quickly and then leave you in their safe hands. I'll start with the moderator, Jamia Kolade. This is the topic very close to his heart. He's an ex-official member of the NBA-SBL Committee on Employment and Industrial Relations, which is hosting today's session. And also the trustee of the employee, well, trustee and convener, and the man behind what is known today as Ellen. He loves the employment law and all ramifications. He will do justice to this. With him are esteemed panelists, and I will you ladies first, gentlemen, pardon me. I'll start with Enabong Oza, who is also an expert. She is coming with years of experience in-house. She works with Shell, and she's had to deal with this severally. And it's also fantastic because she's going to be bringing to us the sort of tension you see when you have a multinational operating in an environment where sometimes the cultural norms are different from where they're coming from. And next to that is Mr. Emmanuel Michael, a very seasoned HR practitioner. He's if you want to know about HR, you need to follow the hashtag HR with EM. He does an amazing work, and he's going to be bringing his practice experience to bear. And I'll end with my colleague, good friend, former immediate past chairman of the NBA-SBL Employment and Industrial Law Committee of the NBA-SBL, Oseokbe, who is a partner at TLC LLP. I would call him an expert, a specialist really in labor and employment law. He understands very much the issues we're dealing with here. And we'll be bringing to bear, his experience as an external consultant. So when the clients have all of those crises, they go to him. So he'll be bringing that experience to bear. So Jamil, I hand over the floor to you with the excellent panelists we have today. And I know you will do justice to today's session. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you, Mary, for that brief introduction. to the topic, and thank you to our esteemed panelists. These are, yes, like you put it, Mary, this is a top panel for what is a very interesting topic, but mostly misunderstood by many people. So we decided in the committee that we will talk about something that has both a social and legal impact on the society at large, not just the workplace. So we came up with this topic on diversity and inclusion. And we're very happy that we have people who are not just theoretical experts in this field. These are people who live with the decisions that businesses need to make um, when it comes to DEI initiatives. So like Mary mentioned, I'll just give a very brief synopsis of what diversity and inclusion is about. I was joking with my colleagues on the committee that when you mention diversity, equity, and inclusion, even at the time of selecting this topic, there's a certain aspect of diversity that jumps up and people be like, you want to talk about this thing? It's not allowed in Nigeria. I say, no. Diversity is actually a very wide topic. And I said, okay, I'm going to surprise people. We might not even talk about that topic at all, just for people to appreciate how diverse this topic is, really. So when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, some call it diversity and inclusion, some call it diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some talk about, call it diversity, equality, and inclusion. And so maybe there are some overlap, but the general idea is you come into a workplace, people with different backgrounds, experiences, and interests and needs. How do you harmonize all of these differences and make them work together for the common good of the business and the individuals who make the business run? And that's what we're going to be looking at, both the regulatory aspects, the human resource management aspect, and of also the sociocultural aspects, and then see how diversity and inclusion, even though it's a global movement right now, also has the local circumstances that you must pay attention to. And so we'll just get into it. The session is planned to last about 1 hour, 30 minutes, maybe more. And we're just going to be having a conversation, right? There are no slides, no scripted discussions. Presentations. We're just going to have a discussion on some very salient points. It's not a topic we can exhaust on this session. That is very clear, and you come to understand that very soon. But we'll do our best in hitting some keynotes, and then we'll have the audience have the opportunity to also ask their own questions with a general Q&A at the session. So borrowing a leaf from my vice chairman, Mary, vice chairman of the NBA Committee on Employment and Industrial Relations, I would also told the diversity part by having the lady on the panel start the session. But let me do some deeper introduction to Enobong. Enobong is my boss in Shell. Enobong has been in Shell since 2024. Before then, she was in private practice. And apart from the regular job, managing cases together, she also is a very key part of, a key member of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee of the company since 2019. So she has a lot of practical experience to share when it comes to leading or participating in D&I initiatives from the in-house counsel perspective. So, Enobong, the reason why I'm asking you this first question is because of that background. And, like I said, people talk about diversity, equity, equality, inclusion. They might be confusing sometimes. So as lawyers, we like to define things a lot. Can you give us some definition? What do we mean by diversity, equity, or equality? I'm not sure which one should apply when, and inclusion. So, because they can be very confusing sometimes, or they might overlap. So in your view, are there any differences, if any, amongst these different concepts?
Thank you, Jamiu. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me start by thanking you, Jamil, Mr. Folabi Kuti SAN, and the leadership of the NBA-SBL for inviting me to be part of this discussions. Now, it's really important for us in our profession and society at large. Now, these three words or concepts, diversity, equity, and inclusion, are different, but they are closely linked. So these are values that are held by many organizations and society at large to strive to ensure fair representation for all, to meet the needs of all and ensure the common good. Okay? Just to say, before I go into the definition, that the benefits of DE&I are enormous. And I'm sure the other speakers will speak to it as we go along. But some key ones are that it helps to improve the quality of decision-making if you imbibe this in your organization, because of course there's a diverse mix of people who contribute to the decision-making. It sharpens your focus, increases customer insight and innovation. It also ensures that employees feel more motivated and satisfied, that they are contributing and their voice is being heard, and generally improves the organization's image and license to operate. So I know we're in a lawyer, a legal forum. So this is something that I think every firm should have. Then I want to highlight a McKinsey study that I read recently, where they did a study in 15 countries across 1,000 companies, and they found out that organizations that had gender diverse executives outperformed their contemporaries who do not have that by 48%. And when you then deepen the mix to have people who are ethnically, racially diverse plus women, then the performance level goes higher by 36%. So what is diversity? Diversity refers simply to, the mixture of representation in the workplace. It ranges from gender, male, female. In some clients now, they say they're non-binary. Such exist, which of course based on our Nigerian law, those are not recognized. You have age diversity, all the different generations that are in the workplace, from the baby boomers who should be retiring about now, down to the Gen Z buddies, as I hear they are called. They call themselves. You have ethnic diversity, physical ability, and neurodiversity. So some people are physically challenged, and others, some could be having autism, ADHD, dyslexia. We all need to be accommodated in the workplace. Then you also have diversity of thoughts. If everyone in your organization is thinking the same, acting the same, dressing the same, you guys are missing out on something, on many things there, religious diversity, and this thing permeates not only in the workplace, even in society at large. In Nigeria, with our federal character, woven into our constitution, all those are measures of ensuring diversity. Then what is equity? Equity in the workplace is about leveling the playing field. It's about looking out for people who are disadvantaged or underrepresented and making accommodation for them so that they can, come up to the level that others are at and be able to compete also. So equity has some level of subjectivity in it. Some people are privileged, and equity is not equality. Equality is, everything has to be the same, everyone having same resources, regardless of their pre-existing barriers. But equity wants to look at those who are underrepresented, who are disadvantaged, and try to accommodate them too. And some people may say, oh, does equity not then mean some favoritism? No, because it's known, the criteria is known, and everybody then works together to ensure that there's that cross-level representation for everyone in the workplace. Okay? Inclusion is like the glue that holds everything together. It's how the staff experience the workplace. How free do they feel to speak up? How safe do they feel in the workplace? are they their true selves? Are people one way at work because of the culture them that doesn't allow them to be free, and then a different way at home? So that's what inclusion is. And it just ensures that everyone is heard, and all the other equity and diversity is working daily. It's not just something that is said once in a while at some big meeting, or is in our vision and mission statement, but nobody sees it at play in the workplace. So those are the, I think, my own definition of these three concepts. Thanks, Jamiu.
Okay, yes, thanks, Anobong, for setting the tone of this discussion. And when you hear those things, I mean, we're all diverse. I'm not sure anybody is hearing that for the first time. That we're not all equal in some respects, maybe physiologically or in terms of privilege or background. That also should not be news. So if it is not something that's just been created or coined, it means it should have had some sort of footprint within our legal framework. And to give an insight on that, I will introduce, use that opportunity to introduce our second panelist, Mr. Osenoma Okweku. Call him the emeritus chairman. He was in immediate past chairman of the Employment and Industrial Relations Committee of the NBA. Of course, a partner in the Lawcrest LLP, an HR, immigration, employment law firm top rated in Lagos. Very lengthy profile, so I will not go into that, chairman. But of course, he's a leading employment lawyer recognized by the major directorates, including Who's Who Legal. So, chairman, so when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, there's this tendency to get caught up in a fad, a new coinage, a new catchphrase. People talk about Me Too, and it seems as if that is something that is just a new thing. So when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, would you say that these are things that are strange or new to our legal jurisprudence? I mean, when you remove the fancy catchphrases, what laws or regulations are you aware that already speak to this concept?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Jabi, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Fantastic. It's a pleasure to be here again. I mean, for a moment, I didn't know you were referring to me. I was thinking, who's emeritus chair? Who is this? And who is... So, I mean, I'll take it. It's me. Yeah, that's all right. I'm happy to take it. But let me thank you and Elan, SBL, and the committee and the larger SBL for, if nothing else, for the advocacy around these topics, you know. So this platform is another form of advocacy. And the only thing we can do, and I'll come to that, part of it that we need to do is more advocacy and more advocacy and more advocacy about these things. And so the question, whether it's a new phenomenon or is a fad, or, I mean, I'll look at it from a binary point of view. So there's some aspect of it that you would say is an old wine in a new bottle, but some aspect of it has always been with us. Okay, so if you look at, I mean, I'll make the point again. When it comes to legal frameworks, we don't lack laws. The problem we have is a typology, moving typology to contextual situations. So the concept of typology to context is where what we struggle with. And I'll come back to that. But first, I'll deal with the issue of the framework. So Nigeria is a federation, and the glue that sticks us together is the constitution. So I think it would be a fair point to start from the constitution. The constitution is aware that we are diverse people, ethnic, religious, political views, gender, and more importantly, ethnic. And so in section 42 14 and 147 of the Constitution, there are clear provisions about federal character. That in itself, recognition that there has to be federal character means that there has to be inclusion. Everyone has to be included. So one part doesn't feel left out, right? That's on one hand. So that's a very general provision about discrimination and federal character in terms of government appointment, in terms of ministers from each.
It seems Jose's network has frozen. Okay, but can everyone else hear me? Okay, great. So we'll wait for Jose to come back online. And
CEDAW,
okay.
which is the Convention Against Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, has been applied. And I mean, in the famous case of Ejike Maduaka and Microsoft Nigeria and International, that was the basis of a finding of discrimination. And so that's there. But if you go to specific laws, I mean, that's where you have a differentiation, and you can draw a parallel between the UK and Nigeria. Prior to 2010, the UK will have Gender Equality Act, Race Relations Act, and all that. But by 2010, they have the Equality Act, which is a composite document that talks about equality. I mean, we don't have that. So you have to then look at various legal instruments. So if you look at the Labour Act, Section 54 is another instrument that drives or tries to promote diversity and inclusion. And so because, I mean, I've just digressed a bit, the Labour Act is binary in application of its jurisprudence. So when it talks about a worker, you would then refer to a blue-collar worker by virtue of the definition in Section 91. When it talks about any person, you would then have a universal application. Section 54 is very clear and applies to every person, and it protects the right of pregnant women to have access to maternity leave and maternity pay and security of employment when they go on maternity, when they are confined. So that is another mechanism for inclusion of getting women involved in the workforce, knowing that I'm in the workforce, I'm pregnant, but my job is secure until I come back. That's another two. Now, if we look at from another piece of legislation, the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act of 2018, that clearly says that you can't discriminate against disabilities in the process of applying for work, in the workplace, and access to trading and all that. That's one. Then the Employment Compensation Act, for the first time, has provisions for reintegrating people who've had life-threatening injuries back into the workplace. Recognizing that people can have a disability and then still come back to the workplace is a form of inclusion. And then I think the most progressive, if you ask me, is the Lagos State Special Persons Law, which came into force in 2010, and clearly has a provision that if an organization has more than 100 employees, it should reserve 1% of the workforce for people living with disabilities. Whether it's been implemented, it's a different kettle of fish altogether. But whether we have the laws, we do. So, but if you then look at the old one in new bottoms, what is different now is the spectrum of our diversity, equity, and inclusion. So ours is still streamlined, and rightfully so because of our cultural context, within the areas of religion, political views, discrimination, gender, and that gender, more importantly, is based on the biological stimulations of male and female. So whereas if you talk of inclusion in a different climate, you'll be talking about pronouns, identification, and all that too. I mean, those are all issues that we'll discuss as we move along, but I'll just stop at that point now.
Okay, thanks very much, Chairman. You see why I call you Chairman Emeritus now, because you've condensed a whole semester's lecture on diversity and inclusion in just about 5 to 7 minutes. That's interesting. You've raised a number of issues, which of course we'll get into in the course of the discussion. And one of those key points I'm going to put to EM. Those of us who know him well, to a certain extent, call him EM. Mr. Emmanuel Michael is a very well-known resource person in the HR community. And when he sent his profile and I saw the listings everywhere, I'm like, okay, this might take another session to read out all the recognitions that he has, but he is a coach, career coach, that is a human resource person, C-suite executive, and there's no better person to speak to the HR angle of this than Emmanuel. And so let's talk about one contentious point that always comes up when you try to implement DE&I initiatives. Now, as an HR executive, you have to make hiring decisions every now and then. With the advent of DEI movement, we've had, as part of the criteria for hiring, DEI policies of most organizations. Recently, we had this controversy. I'm not sure if you followed it. There was a controversy with the president of Harvard University and some other Ivy League universities in the midst of the Arab-Israeli war, the current one, the Gaza crisis. And one of the activists pointedly accused the president of Harvard University as not being qualified for the position. She's a Black African woman, African American, and he said pointedly, that's Bill Hackman, I think, that she's not qualified, that she only became president because they consider diversity and inclusion. Otherwise, they're far better qualified candidate. So this tension between competence, merit, and diversity, from your experience, how much do such considerations, diversity and inclusion, play in hiring, at least within the Nigerian context? Do you see a growing trend that companies in Nigeria are making a conscious effort to include DEI considerations in their hiring process? And if they are, how do you see this leading to a situation where you are passing over a better qualified candidate, for instance, because the person doesn't fit into the DEI imperative at that point in time? What's your experience, sir?
Thank you, Jami, and thank you, the NBA-SBL team, for inviting me to join this esteemed panelists to speak on the topic, on the subject of DEI. Okay, so based on what you just shared, I think I saw that story, and one of the major things that the people who were seeking the removal of that particular president, I think basically bordered on or around the issue of plagiarism and all that. And in my own opinion, though, I believe that if we look through the thesis of so many other people who maybe they claim also qualify for that particular position, they might have made one or two mistakes similar to what they accused the woman of, which may be amongst other things that contributed to why they were pushing for her to be removed, that she wasn't all that qualified. But DEI, as we all know it, just like what Ose and Anabab has shared, basically, DEI initiative has an objective, okay? And that objective is basically to create more inclusive workplace. We want a workplace where values, a workplace that values and respects individuals, regardless of their race, regardless of their gender, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their sexual orientation, regardless of their age or disability, like I think was mentioned. So that's basically what DI is supposed to help us achieve. So because we have a DI policy, it does not, take away the place of merit, competence. It doesn't take those things away. Okay. DI is more like an addition to ensure that, okay, when we select the best, when we want to select the candidate for a particular role, we need to get the best. Okay. However, in getting the best, we need to also ensure that the team is diverse, because what I think another mentioned it, that organizations that have diverse group of people within their organization, either at the top level or even within the organization, you notice that they outperform those that are not diverse. Because what we've noticed is that in a diverse organization, you have people with different ideas, different perspectives to solving a challenge. So it gives the opportunity for people to be able to bring in different ideas. And at the end of the day, we discover that there's not just one way of solving a problem. There are different ways of solving the problem. And because of looking at all these different ways of solving the problem, we're likely going to get the best of all the different ways of solving the problem, which will lead to more profitability to the organization, which will lead to more benefit to the people or to the stakeholders that are in that particular organization. So what we need to do is, as we apply the DEI policy, we need to ensure that we are not compromising quality. And by not compromising quality, what I'm saying is that we need to continually base our recruitment or hiring on merits, okay? So we need to make merit-based decisions. So our DEI initiative should not compromise the fundamental principle of hiring based on merit and qualification. The goal should be to attract a pool of candidates, okay? And ensure that the decisions that we are making is without bias, okay? Giving everyone in that pool an equal opportunity. And then what DI will also help us in recruitment is that it helps us to ensure inclusive recruitment. So, which means that if we want to hire for a particular role, we're able to draw from different, let's say, take for instance in Nigeria now, you don't want to hire people all from just people who speak one particular language or one tribe or one part of the country or just one particular state of the country. So you give opportunity to everyone, because at the end of the day, if I hire people just from one particular tribe or one particular state, and I need to sell a product that will appeal to everyone, diverse group in the country. Let's say, for instance, in Nigeria, where you have close to about 250 different ethnic nationalities, and I need to sell this product to all these different nationalities, there will be a time or a situation whereby, in order to communicate with one of these target clients or customers, one might want to, there might be a need to speak the language that that person understands. And so if I have people just from one particular part of the country, I'm not able to communicate effectively with these people. In my previous place where I worked, it's a financial institution dealing with microfinance. You notice that the target group of people that we relate with are usually these, some of them are uneducated, okay? Informal people who are in the streets, in the market, and we need people that can go to them and speak a language that they can understand. So if you send people who cannot speak the language that they can understand, they might not be able to patronize the company. So the other thing we also need to consider is in terms of training and awareness. So there is need for organizations to invest in training the leaders within that particular organization, and even the other employees within the organization, okay? So that they are aware about unconscious biases that might arise or stereotypes that can impact hiring decisions, especially those of them who are placed on the table to interview candidates. So if they are aware of all these biases, stereotypes, it will help them to ensure that when they are evaluating and making decisions, that those decisions are made based on skills, not because this person speaks my language, not because this person comes from the same place where I come from, okay? And not because maybe we attended the same school, because some people can exclude people who did not attend their school or favor people who attend the school that they attend. So we make decisions based on skills, experience, and potential for them to be able to contribute to that particular organization. And then there is need also for us to ensure that there's continuous evaluation. That is, the need to regularly assess the effectiveness of whatever DEI initiative that we have implemented in our hierarchy. Say, for instance, the management team, you have just men. There are no women there. Okay, that's a challenge. You have just women only. There are no men, or you have people of a certain age group. Okay, maybe they are older and there are no middle age or younger age in that particular group. So that becomes a challenge for you to be able to reach certain categories of people. And then maybe one of the, I think the research that Enobong referred to, the McKinsey research, there's a portion that talks about people, organizations hiring people with disability. Okay, so we have people with disability in the organization. It's also a competitive advantage for that particular organization, because there are some people who it appeals to, and that will enable them to even want to invest money more money into this particular organization, because they are hiring people that appeals to them. So these are some of the things that I think I would like to contribute. It looks as if something happened to my video.
Yes, we lost the video, but we still have your voice and your very insightful contribution.
Okay, so I'm not able to start my video. Maybe
maybe you can fiddle with that before we circle back to you. So, but very important point you've made, which is DEI is not necessarily DEI and competence. Yes. Necessarily mutually exclusive. You can still hire a competent person even while adhering to DEI principles or policy. But is that really a cast in stone? Is it something that we can accept as a truism everywhere? I would like to ask us, because for those who are aware of the affirmative action decision of the United States Supreme Court, I think that was early last year, in Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard. Very, very interesting case. And anyone who is interested in this topic should grab that judgment. Very insightful case. Just high-level background. So you had, of course, Harvard University, the famous Harvard University, having in place a policy to give a percentage of admissions to students from disadvantaged background, your Latino, African segment of the society. And some students under this NGO, Students Fair Admissions, actually went to court to say that policy by Harvard discriminates against them and should be scrapped. And that went all the way to the Supreme Court. And of course, very touchy case. In fact, I had never seen a judgment of the Supreme Court where judges were openly insulting one another in the judgment. Of course, the Black judges were against the white judges. And eventually, by majority decision, that policy by Harvard was struck down as being unconstitutional. Contrast that with Nigeria. I'm aware of at least one case, the one filed by Olisa Agbakoba, SAN, about the quota system for unity schools, a judgment of the Federal High Court, which I think the Federal High Court also upheld it as being discriminatory. I can't remember. So, but the point is, these issues still remain contentious because there will always be a segment which feels shortchanged because we are trying to put some other long disadvantaged group up the ladder, so to speak. But how much of a contribution do you see from where you sit, our own legislature and judiciary? How much of an effort or impact do you see them making in this space? Because you mentioned the Equality Act in the UK, for instance. Yes, you've mentioned a smattering of laws here and there in Nigeria. But in terms of giving that kind of clear policy direction that we see in students for fair admission versus Harvard University and actually making laws, how much of an impact do you see coming from our courts and the legislature? And do you see them also suffering from any limitations from society in terms of disconnect? Are the coaches watching themselves because of what society is feeling, or is just something they're avoiding? What's your experience? Is also with us?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Interesting point you make. And I could spend the next hour talking about this. But I mean, this was what I was talking about typology and contextual implementation, right? So if I start from the point of the legislature, I mean, one of the few good things that's happened to us is National Industrial Court. Load them or praise them. You have to give them kudos, right? Up until the move at Skybank, the National Industrial Court were very, very progressive minded, in trying to use case law to push the agenda for inclusion and diversity. A couple of cases from Abimbola against FRCN, Ejike Maduaka against Microsoft, which are modeling against UBA. They were in the process of trying to define through case law a policy shift that would promote inclusiveness, diversity, and equity. So to that extent, yes, I agree. But you see, a lot more has to be done because our legislation most times ideally should be a tool for social change or engineering. But most times it is reactive. So something happens, okay, let's get legislation ban it. That's it. Nobody is thinking in 5 years' time. I mean, as at 10 years ago, I knew that by 2025, Gen Zs will have majority of people in the workforce. And the way you manage millennials is not the way you manage Gen Z. As at 6-7 years ago, we knew that gig economy and platform work would be an issue, right? Would be the new forms of work. But we haven't done anything, no regulations, nothing. But today we have a regulation to say employees expatriate levy. That's the law, that's it. Let's do this. I mean, so when we do these things, we're not thinking, we're not planning, we're not thinking forward. So I give you a typical example. When you mentioned affirmative action, I laughed. Part of my thesis was on employee voice. And when I started working with, it was based on my thesis, I started working in Tesco's in the UK. The first major project I worked on was a project on affirmative action. And so they had a group of huge stores in a certain area of the UK. But that area, they had a lot of Blacks and Pakistanis. But their workforce, they had very limited people from that ethnic extraction in the workforce. And so it wasn't a case of giving them work. What we did was to look, why are people not working in this place? Why are they not getting in? We found out a lot of them were not educated. So they couldn't even get into Tesco's graduate training program. So the whole idea was to then create special schooling tutorials, after school care, and lecturing and modeling for them. Just affirmative action to give them specially to bring them up to this point where they can even apply for the roles. Not even handing over roles to them. I mean, this kind of policy to create an environment for people to even aspire, to even begin to think to aspire and to get a leg into the door for the interview. Those are the kind of policies we'll be thinking about. But again, like I say, we get to a point where we have a problem, I'll make a law to ban it. Thinking through things as we sit down now, I've had this conversation, I can assure you that if we go forward to the National Assembly and say, oh, I mean, the way the society is going, you're going to have more women here. What are we doing to do this and include more people in the workforce? You're going to say to you, we'll get to that point, we'll ban it. we'll make a law that says you can only employ 5 women because you have too many women. And for as long as you have that mindset, there's no mindset shift. No matter how much the judiciary is doing, which I think National Industrial Court, because they're a specialized court, they are doing quite a bit. But we cannot isolate the National Industrial Court from the society which we live in. And if there's no shift in mindset, then we are going to struggle. So for me, I think they're doing a bit, but not as much as we would have loved the legislature to do. The judiciary, through National Industrial Court, I think they are doing quite a bit, but they're being hamstrung now by the one and Skybank. And so they're a bit reluctant and putting their leg on the pedal because they're a bit reluctant to push it as far as they want to push. I think I'll stop here for now. I think we lost, can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I think we lost Jamil.
Jamil, yes.
Okay.
He's back.
Okay, sorry. The diversity of Nigeria is that some places have light, steady.
Indeed, you can say that.
Okay. So, Deborah, thanks, Jose. I think I caught the gist of what you're talking about in terms of the legislature and maybe our judiciary also being proactive and not wait till these things have become entrenched and they're trying to play catch up. So that's taken. So now, in terms of what the law at least has been able to protect so far in Nigeria, one special class that I've enjoyed the law of protection is will be women. You mentioned Section 54 of the Labor Act when you were given your intro, Ose, and I assume you were referring to the maternity protections under the Labor Act for women. It is only until recently that women too started enjoying some of that after we've given birth to all our children, but that's fine. So, even though we've had this 1974 legislation, I believe, the Labor Act, talking about women being protected, don't give them work when they're about to go for confinement, even when they resume and they still need more time, give them time off and all of that. And the average company, has this as part of their policy. And yet, with all of these protections, some will even argue or tell you that those protections sometimes put women at a disadvantage. So whether consciously or openly or overtly, there seems to be some unspoken glass ceiling for women in the workforce because by their nature, sometimes they need to take time off. And when you look at Nigeria, being a global participant in these DEI initiatives, as you are, you will notice that while some other jurisdictions seem to have been making progress with getting women into C-suite positions, it doesn't seem like we are making as much progress in Nigeria. What do you think is responsible for this? Is it our social cultural circumstances in Nigeria that is solely responsible for women being largely repressed? And what do you think we can do to make more women more included or have more equity in the workforce?
Thank you, Jamil. You're right. There is a sociocultural factor in what's happening with women in the workplace in Nigeria. So progress is being made, but not enough. Let me start with a point that I think is also made about education, because it affects women in Nigeria. For a long time, women have been marginalized, and there's a whole lot still to be done. In terms of education of women in this country, there's still a long way to go. Women need to be given access to education, the right type of education. Companies and organizations and government need to create scholarships for women so that they can have the right skill sets, maybe at the university level, and things like internship opportunities too, so they can have the right skill sets to be able to apply and come into the workplace and then be, available to rise through the ranks up to the senior management level. So that's the first thing that is holding women back. Then the women who are already in the workplace, you have issues around cultural demands on women. The truth is that women are the caregivers in our families, in society, and this puts a lot of stress and strain on women. And so combining it with careers leads to more burnout, exhaustion, and like many have noted, women resigning, at certain points in their career, just leaving the workplace because they cannot cope. So in organizations having flexible working policies like this remote working. Before COVID, everyone thought if we're not in the office all day long, we are not working, But now we see that people can actually work from home. Women with our multitasking abilities are able to do things in the house and still be productive, So such accommodations for even creches and spaces for women, nursing mothers in the workplace would help to tackle this cultural expectation that is somewhat impacting women's ability to rise and deliver in the workplace. Even paternity leave, you give it to men, it also makes the men understand that they have a responsibility, an opportunity to care for the children. And so the women can also show up more at work. I think all such measures would help. Then there's insufficient sponsorship and mentoring for women. The truth is, if you look across board, in most professions, most organizations, the men are more in number. And they need to be open to mentoring women, sponsoring them. Mentorship is different from sponsorship. Sponsorship is believing in someone, seeing potential, and actually advocating for the person, ensuring the person has opportunities created for her to perform, to stretch, to develop, And then mentoring, of course, is to guide, to say, do this, do that in your work, in the course of work, and it will help you get this done. So there needs to be more of that for women. Some men maybe don't even want to mentor women. They say, oh, before tomorrow, they'll accuse me of sexual harassment or something I say or don't say. I think that we need to be more open to this and just have an open mind to support women more in this area. And also, it's something that senior management needs to do to set the right examples. And then also, women should stop limiting themselves. We have a tendency to have self-limiting a mindset, thinking we can't do things, we can't get things done. Let's get involved in networking with colleagues, take part in office politics, whatever that means, in an ethical manner, advocate for ourselves and other people. And also, I think having enough women, I've talked about the funnel even coming into the organization, then ensuring that you have women at the mid-level management cadre who can then, rise up and feel more the senior opportunities as they open up. Let me stop there, I think, because of time. I had other examples, but I'll stop there. Thanks.
Yes, like you said, this is a topic we could spend the whole day or week talking about. So, but yes, very important point you've made about the support that women need and will continue to need to be able to even get to a space where we can consider them fully included in the workplace. And I'll get back to you on some specific initiatives that participants can borrow from your experience for use in their workplaces. But let's talk about an aspect of DEI that is, yes, popular within the general social space discussions, but we don't look at the legal or HR perspective that often, and that is ageism. Also mentioned the Gen Z, the famous Gen Zs, when he was speaking earlier. And these are people who have upended all preset notion about what a workplace should be, how long should you stay at a career, what can you say to your boss, what can you not say, and everybody has tales of, sometimes I'm using tales to tell about our Gen Z. But many don't realize that when it comes to ageism, it's not just skewed towards the younger ones. There's also ageism against older people. So it's a papa no regret, or old papa, you're too old for this one. In fact, a recruitment will tell you once you are 40, you're out of this interview. It's put there in the adverts, not more than 30, not more than 35. But yet you have people who are advanced in age, and like you say, wine gets tastes better with time. So the question is, as an HR practitioner, how much do you see this playing out in the workplace? Yes, the Gen Zs, we can take it as granted. Everybody knows they're everywhere. And how do you see play out in the workplace, in the sense that when you're making decisions in the workplace, for instance, is there a tendency to put down the younger members of the team or the business as not experienced enough, or just being badly behaved without understanding their viewpoint, because you believe based on your own, when we were being trained, you don't leave until your boss leaves the work, leaves the office. How do you get the best out of your employees, regardless of their age, whether they are elderly or, far down on the age spectrum? EM.
Okay, thank you, Jamie, for that question. So I would like to start by saying that just like in every other climb, Nigeria is also experiencing this multi-dimensional, multi-generational age group within the organization. And if you check the current population of Nigeria as published by the statistics that have been published, you will notice that the NBS report shows that we actually have a lot of young people having a majority, constituting a majority of our population. Okay, and as a result, it therefore means that we would have lots of this younger generation in the workforce. Okay, the baby boomers are currently going away, so you have a bit of the Gen X, you have more of the millennials, and right now we're beginning to have lots of the Gen Zs coming in, and Gen Alphas are beginning to creep in as well. So you have a situation whereby we have up to 4 or 5 generations coexisting together in the same workplace. And we also know that their characteristics are slightly different, okay? And because their characteristics are slightly different, the tendency for conflicts, okay? Where some people will say, we are the elders, you need to listen to us. And the younger ones will say, no, we are the coconut head people. And so we not go agree. And, they want things done their own way. So organizations right now are beginning to recognize that fact. And so the progressive ones are also beginning to put in place measures to ensure that we can get the best out of all these different groups working together in the organization. And so some of the things or strategies that organizations will have to consider in order to get the best, because you want the success of the organization. Even the market that we go to sell, you also notice that we're beginning to have a larger portion of this younger generation as the people that we sell to. And so in order for any organization to succeed in this area, there is need for certain strategies to be deployed. So the first one that is critical is for organizations to begin to promote what I call the inclusive culture, okay? So organizations will begin to foster a workplace culture that values contribution from all age groups and not just the older ones because we think that they are wise, they have the experience. The younger ones too. I used to give an example. My kids, okay, triplets, they're just 4 years old, going to 5. One of them, very tech savvy. Usually my phone is always locked, passworded, but somehow this little boy at the age, even before he became 4, he figured out how to navigate my phone to the point that he's able to use the camera, notwithstanding that the phone is locked. Okay? And so I was surprised, noticed, and I didn't even discover that. I didn't know you could use the camera on the phone when the phone is locked, but he discovered it and started using it and started showing it to me. This is it. So there is something that these younger ones can actually bring to the workplace, and so we should not discard them. So there's need for us to emphasize shared goals, collaborative efforts that transcend across different generations. Then the second thing, I think Ose mentioned it, in terms of the work place, okay, there's need for us to introduce a flexible work policy, okay, a flexible work policy that recognizes the peculiarity of the different generations that we have. Everyone have different way of their preference for how they want to work. Some want to be there in the office every day, Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday. Some want to be in the office. Can you hear me? Some want to be in the office some few days in the week. So there's need for us to implement flexible work policies that accommodate the diverse needs, such as remote work options and flexible hours. Then I think Enor mentioned mentorship. There's need for us to establish mentorship programs that will facilitate knowledge transfer between the older employees and the younger employees, okay? So when we do that, what that helps the organization to achieve is to bridge that generational gap, okay? And in bridging the generational gap, it also encourages collaboration between these different groups, okay? To be able to contribute effectively to the organization. Then in our training and development, every generation or different people within the organization have different learning styles, okay? They have different learning styles on how they learn. So there's need for us to be able to identify the learning styles that appeals to these different groups within the organization so that when we want to deliver our training or development program, we don't just adopt just one particular style, because some people maybe are visually inclined, some prefer to read, some prefer to listen only, some prefer to get involved, okay, in the activity in order to learn. So they need to deploy different learning styles to make sure that we capture everyone within the organization. Then the other strategy, again, has to do with communication channels, okay? So we need to encourage open communication across all levels in the organization, okay? Create platforms that will enable people to be able to share their perspectives, share their experiences, share their ideas. When that platform is available for everyone, it gives that sense of inclusion, okay? Also considered, valued, and that will help the different generations to be able to work well. I'm not saying that, okay, maybe this organization is suited only for the older people or the younger people. So I think I will just basically stop here. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting. I'll still come to Enobong on more initiatives that she could share her experience on with the participants. But before then, I'd also like us to touch on some issue which is very, very often overlooked. It's very. I stutter because it's alarming until you go for. how we all can be guilty of this. And it has to do with racial discrimination. Now, I'm using racial discrimination in a very wide context to include tribal and even ethnic discrimination. And so, also, I'm looking towards you now. For people who may not have worked in very diverse organizations, maybe they may be forgiven, but even within, there's never any monolithic, team. It's either you have people of different races or different religion, or you are from different parts of the country. Now that we're talking about Nigeria. In 2022, we had this record fire, I think about $300 something million, where a Tesla was fined in the US for racial abuse of a factory worker. We also had the case in Nigeria, Cheko Duago and Uber, where his boss was, the claimant's boss was comparing him to a character in Game of Thrones because of his name and where he came from. So some of these things come as jokes or innuendos. You call some people from some parts of the country by some names jokingly, or I don't want to be specific now. So most times they come as jokes, but then we've had situations where they led to liability in the court. So in that Cheko Drago case, for instance, it was like the manager said, oh, it was just a harmless joke and all of that. Well, nominal damages, but Uber got fined 1 million naira. So, and that was Uber, the company, not the manager that made the joke. You also mentioned Ejike Madueke and Microsoft, where Microsoft got fined 36 million because someone was holding someone's waste in the office. I call it a waste handling case. So as someone who is in the business of advising companies, you will agree with me that companies or business owners can no longer stay away at a distance and say, oh, it was something between both of them. This was not a company thing, it was between both of them and all of that, because of the potential for vicarious liability. What kind of policies do you think companies should be having in place to avoid liability for some of this behavior in the workplace?
Okay, I'll go back to, I talked about the concept of typology to context. And so what you find, so on the face of it, I mean, you should have your equal opportunity policy, you have your diversity and inclusion policy, you should have a whistleblowing policy, you should have a disciplinary process. These are all good to have. So you have that in your chest of documents with your HR team and the legal team. But one thing that is very critical, and I find this a lot, there's hardly any handshake between the legal department and HR. And that is one of the biggest challenges you have, because HR is on one spectrum designing policies. Legal is on one spectrum looking at the implications of laws. There's no handshake across these two teams to say, hold on, when we're implementing with people, how will this turn out? How do we implement this? So that we don't have unintended consequences. Because what you then have most times with policies is unintended consequences, which are the outcomes of those policies that initiative. But apart from that, quite apart from that, the most important thing for me is about creating the awareness, advocacy, and ensuring that, so if someone says today, oh, you're holding my waist, the person must have confidence in the system and the process, in the policies, that if I report this, because it's going to affect the ability of women to want to come here, and that reduces inclusiveness, because there's this guy that wants to hold every woman's waist. The person reporting must have the confidence that the process will run, the institutionalized process will run, and that if she chooses not to to remain anonymous. She'll be kept anonymous, and that without her disclosing who she is, the process will run and the issue will be dealt with. And feedback will be cascaded to see, oh, this happened. You don't have to mention names. This happened, but this was dealt with, and this is the outcome, and it won't happen again. And we also need to understand that every incident is an opportunity to learn, because you can never plan for every eventuality. But when these things happen, you start planning. Oh, for goodness sake, this can happen. What if it happens next time? How do we prevent this from happening? If you remember, part of the issue why Microsoft was held culpable was the fact that they reported nothing was done. This money was not done, and investigation was not carried out, but they had a policy. So it's not just about having the policies. You can have all the most brilliant policies. Well, I mean, I've seen some policies and are mind-blowing. But in terms of typological contextual implementation, what have you done? Because the way you implement a policy, and this is not even multinational, the way you implement a policy in South Carolina is not the same way you implement the same policy in Nigeria. Because if you do it the same way, you will have unintended consequences. So we must begin to look at each contextual situation and see how we can implement the policy to bring out the outcome that we want it to. So for me, yes, I think we should have the policies in place. I mean, if you don't have a policy, what are you implementing? Anyways, so it's important that you have policies in place as an organization. It's important that those policies are implemented. It's also important that you carry out an audit of those policies and implementation to see if they're actually working. On the one hand, it's also important that you carry out an attitude survey to even see if the employees believe or have faith in these policies. Because it's one thing, all your policies and processes and measures will check out. And those are the policies, those are the institutional framework, they will check out. But the individuals who are involved, what are their take on it? Do they believe in it? Do they just think it's a policy for the sake of fancy policy, sake of having policies, or do they truly believe in it? So it's a full spectrum of having a policy, implementing it, checking, auditing, and constantly reviewing your policies and processes to ensure that it actually leads you to the predicted outcome that is positive for everyone.
Okay, thank you, Jose. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, in fact, over time, and I apologize to the participants. I thought we could take more time, but it seems we've run out of time. So what that means is we may need to go straight into Q&A and take maybe just one or two questions. And okay, I'm going through the questions now. And I think this one has been answered. Does Nigeria have legislative requirement? Okay, so this has been answered. Okay, this one too has been answered. How do you do D&I without sacrificing merit? And let me see if there are any other questions. If I don't see any questions on what has been asked so far, I'll just take parting shots from Enobong and EM, since Jose just spoke. And Enobong, again, that question I would really like you to touch on, but that point is, as a parting shot, what are specific DE&I actionable initiatives that you've been engaged in and you think others can try out in their workplaces? Just, very sharp.
Thank you, Jamiu. In addition to Ose's point on having policies and auditing it, it's advisable to set that tone at the top. Let the leadership of the organization speak and act DE&I, have DE&I as an agenda topic in your regular meetings. Reward people who exhibit this behavior in everyday work. Have tools. There are things like high five tools that people have. Colleagues, it's not just a manager. Anyone can say high five, give a colleague a high five for good behavior in this regard. There's a need also to set targets. It's what you measure that you can really see progress in. do the audit, see what the diversity mix in your organization is, set targets, work towards it to try to meet those targets, whether it's in age, gender, religion, or whatever. Some other simple things that capture the hearts and minds of people is I've been involved in a book and movie network. People just volunteer in the organization, come together, read a book, discuss it, within a certain timeline. It helps foster community learning, can be on a DE&I subject. We also do on movies that you can choose a movie. We did one on Hidden Figures and you watch it together. There needs to be structured mentoring, please. People shouldn't just leave it to whoever wants to mentor someone should mentor. Let organizations make it mandatory and have a structured mentoring. There's reverse mentoring where the younger people, mentor seniors in the organization, the leadership, and then, it's also a mix the other way around. The other thing is even things like a DE&I observer in meetings helps you to check diversity of thoughts in meetings. We have a little checklist where somebody just checks it at the end of a meeting to see how much airtime the people have. Is the leader always just choosing people who say a particular thing all the time, or are other people or other views being accommodated? Toolkits for leaders, peer circles where colleagues come together and discuss issues, newsletters, a whole lot. Even participating, collaborating with your external stakeholders. It doesn't have to be your organization alone coming up with initiatives. If you are in-house, your external lawyers are doing something on DE&I, key into that, and also encourage people, do business. How do I put it? Reward businesses with more business who have a diverse team. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anobong. So EM will end with you. I don't see any other questions that haven't been answered in the course of the presentation. And
Okay.
if you look back at your career, at least you've been in the HR sector for at least 20 years now. And when you look back, how diverse do you see the modern Nigerian workplace?
Okay. I would say very diverse. But one thing I've also seen is that when we talk about DE&I, the tendency has always been to look at it from the spectrum of what is happening in the Western world, okay? Instead of looking at it from what's happening, say, in Nigeria or in Africa. So there's need for HR professionals to understand and appreciate the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and understand that it affects not just only recruitment, it affects the way we manage talent within the organization. It affects leadership development programs. How do we develop leaders within the organization? So there's need to ensure that the way we develop leaders in the organization is inclusive, is equitable, is diverse, and not that we decide and say, okay, there's this thing that we have within the workplace where we say that we want to invest only in high potentials. That is also being discriminatory. It's not inclusive. Yeah. So if the people are still within the organization, there's need to make sure that whatever program that we initiative that we are deploying covers the whole generation or the whole population within that particular organization. Then there's something else also that I would like to point out. The D&I is not just going to disappear. So there's need for us to be aware, as we have discussed here, younger generations or younger employees are coming into the workplace, so they will continue to demand for more. And so HR people need to be on the alert. And in closing, I would like to say that what makes us different makes our organizations stronger. Thank you.
Thank you very much, EM. And on that note, I'll call Madam Ajibike Oshodi, one of the key members of our committee, Principal Partner of Queen and Young, the Barristers and Solicitors, to close this session for us.
Thank you very much, everybody. Leonard Silk, committee members, you've done a great job. Thank you very much, Jamil, for steering the conversation. Of course, we had stellar panelists, and I want to encourage you all to join our Committee on Employment Law, starting from the only lady who gave us a wealth of knowledge. She told us so much about diversity, and she told us ways to move forward. To, of course, our emeritus chairman, Oze, who struck up a novel point that the Constitution starts with diversity. I never thought about that. And of course, Mr. Emmanuel, who gave us so much insight about ageism and other HR things that affect diversity, such as market share and communication. As Ms. Ebong said, the First Lady, the only Amazon in this panel, she said that companies go up by 36% once they have good racial and sexual diversity. So I urge us all to implement them. Well done, everybody. Thank you for attending our session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And that
Thanks for having me.
ends the session today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Enobong, say Emmanuel.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Good night. Enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.
Bye, thank you.